Hey, all, straight off the top, want to correct a couple of things from last week. When I was talking about the Onyx Sinner case, I kept referencing the February 11th date. That's the earliest it could possibly be based on the dates that they had set out. I did not explain that well. So no date set as of now, but we know it's not before then, which then dictated the conversation we had afterwards. So the premise of everything after that was, I think, correct. But I should have specified it's not a concrete date yet. It's just a not before that date. As it currently exists. Also, something Max Eisenbud corrected me on, the EGA suspension and why she got credit for it was because the investigation was going on in her case still. So she got credit for that, whereas Sinners has already been investigated. So he won't get credit for like post-Australia if he doesn't play. I had that completely wrong. Let's get to the show. Hey everyone, welcome to Served. I'm Andy. We got the whole crew back. JW, producer Mike has a unbelievable tan.
Yeah,
he said
Can't tell with this up light.
Week of jeez, what a diva.
In a cave?
I'm in a gym.
We are in a gym. Techie Sean in the house. We had a great Friday night at the Charlotte XO here. This episode is going to be largely positive vibes like we've talked about. But Mike, also, there was a funeral.
Yeah, sadly.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember from our fan Q&A episode, but we had a friend named Basil, long A with a Z, but it's an S. You know, it's Basil. We were debating. But he sadly had an old sledgehammer.
Didn't we tell him to kill it?
Yeah, and you said kill it. Kill it, and it was dead anyways. Oh, no. And so he was nice enough. We asked him to submit a funeral video, and he did. He was listening, and he sent us this funeral video. Techie Sean.
Friends, thanks for joining me here today in Beachview Tennis Club and Sanibel. We're here to say goodbye to my longtime partner, Sledgy. I'm really going to miss him. He served me so well over the years. We've won a lot of tournaments. We've won a lot of sets, but just like everything else, sometimes it's just time to say goodbye. So, Sledgy, I bid you adieu.
Hey, wait a moment. You got more than one of those.
Oh, no. All of them? Sledgy too.
Oh, wait. You got more than two of those.
Fine. All right, let's go drink. I gotta wait for my new Wilson shift to arrive.
Oh, so great.
I love it.
Our friends at Wilson, they have 3 shifts on the way.
I love it.
They have 3 shifts. What do you think about that, John?
Great. I would have brought my bagpipes if I'd known. I like how that went from a burial to like a pyre. That went to like a religious exercise for multiple rackets. But who among us hasn't been there? I hope he gets a new stick soon.
Listen, it's always hard to say goodbye. Hashtag boys to men. It's just tough. In all seriousness, I love our listeners. I love our viewers. Like to actually, for us to just go off on one and me have a segment where I say, go kill your racket. And we get this out of it. Wilson steps up, gives rackets. No losers.
Yeah. We've had a lot of people offer to bury their rackets since then. Sadly, it doesn't work that way, but maybe we'll hold that. Maybe we'll do a quarterly racket funeral.
I don't know. It's pretty good. I mean, I think we could do like a subset. But listen, even funerals right now in tennis seem to have good vibes in tennis. We're having a moment. Lots of positive vibes. We had a good weekend. I'll tell you that much right now. Or at least the start of the weekend was good. We want to really kind of focus on, and it's just something that's been running across my mind all the time, but especially in the last week where a lot of the headlines, and this isn't a tennis specific issue, but kind of cling to negative and we overlook general decency and acts of good, of which tennis, I think, is the standard bearer in tennis. And I am fully aware that this is probably a completely biased opinion, but I'll give some anecdotal evidence that it was supported by people this weekend here in Charlotte for the Alcaraz Tiafoe, Sloane Stevens, Maddie Keys, EXO, from a lot of people who are events people who happen to put on a tennis event, saying things like, are all tennis players this responsible and okay and good with media and start at yes and work backwards? And they're doing community clinics, and Sloane and Maddie are over here, and Carlos is doing a talk here, and Francis, in true Francis fashion, his smile didn't leave his face for 2 days. We just stand up against all comparables all the time. So I want to dig into that a little bit more. And also something we didn't talk about last week at all. And it's something that needs to be pointed out, because you don't want these acts to be taken for granted. Like, it's a really big effort, but when the best player on the male side of all time going into, listen, Novak doesn't know how many years he has left. Is this it? I don't know. We don't know. We're predicting health, but it's not 10 years, right? We're closer to the end than we are to the beginning. To start a new coaching relationship and then fly across the world in December to Argentina to play a farewell match with a friend of yours and someone you've shared the court with, purely for them. Novak doesn't get anything out of this, right? So Novak flies to Argentina, plays a one-night farewell in front of 15,000 people for one of the game's most beloved players, someone I played against many times, doesn't have a bad day, doesn't, if you have a problem with Del Potro, then that's probably says more about you than it does him. But what an effort, right? To go and say, I'm going to do this thing for you because I respect you. We all kind of feel for Juan Martín and what he's gone through with injuries, because without those injuries, he has a Murray type career. He's that good. Like, he wins more majors. He's better than Chuckers like I was. I mean, the guy can throw it off both sides. He's one of the few that could beat the big three if he was playing his best tennis, right? Some of us needed to play our best tennis and needed a little help from them on a given day. He could go out and with his forehand, he could dominate the court, because when his forehand was on, it was the best shot on the court. You would hit a good ball over there and you knew there was a chance that you were going to be a mannequin watching it go by you on the next ball. But Novak going there, I say this with all respect, finding a way to lose to Juan Martín del Potro in his current state in Argentina. It's just a beautiful act. It really is a beautiful act. And it comes from respect, right? It comes from absolute respect. Knowing JW, you've been closer to Novak, and certainly he gets and has earned, some negative headlines, but it seems like I won't even say consciously, because I don't think it's that thing, but he has the ability to be inspired by people and then act on that inspiration in the form of things that are really good. I really respect this move and paying his props to Juan Martín del Potro.
This is pure tennis altruism. I mean, you sort of lay out the facts here. And Novak, by the way, he's older than Del Potro by a year. So here's a guy who, as you say, very charitably, clearly there are fewer and fewer sunsets here. He's 37 years old. He has a new coaching relationship. He has a wife and two children. So he's missing the Christmas festivities in Belgrade or in Spain, and he keeps this commitment. And if you've been following Del Potro, there's a lot going on here. I mean, here's a guy who, this guy beat Rafa and Roger to win the 2009 U.S. Open. He was born in 1988, so he's not even 20 years old, and he's beaten two of the towering giants. I think when you say this is a guy who could have had Murray's career, that might be understating things. And everyone who's, as you say, everyone who's encountered Del Potro, colleagues in the locker room, also people like us, you can't not like the guy. He's had a rough go of it. Injuries are only part of it. He's been very outspoken on social media. If you want to sort of go down those rabbit holes, he's been dealing with a lot. And Novak clearly made this commitment a long time ago, before he knew he was going to be working with Andy Murray in his offseason, and kept it. And you're right. I mean, this was nothing other than pure philanthropy, really. And Novak thought it was the right thing to do. I suspect there may have been a measure of it's almost like survivor's guilt. Like, again, Novak is older than this guy, And we're talking about him as someone who could contend for a major. And he's looking across the net at a colleague who didn't have the career that it looked like he would initially. Novak kept his commitment, didn't get nearly as much fanfare as one would hope. It was very popular sort of in tennis Twitter circles and in Argentina, obviously. But this was really a lovely gesture. And, I think there's a bigger discussion here that I'm sure we'll have about the role of December and exhibition season and competition. But no, Novak did not get anything out of this materially other than it was just an act of good, and he should be commended for that.
Yeah, he should. He has been, and this isn't surprising from him. Listen, as much as any of us have disagreed with him, like we got to call it fair. Like, the best of all time, and he is consistently capable of doing these really, really nice and decent things over and over again, especially for people that he has shared the court with. Right? He has just been really good about it. And I'll tell you what, one of the most fun weeks of my post-career, and I feel lucky that my career was ended at the US Open by Del Potro. Like, if you could write who you would, want to take an exit to, you all the while not wanting to take an exit to anyone, there's nobody classier. There's no one that, however many years later, every time I see him, we have that shared experience. I just really, really like and respect Juan Martín and the life stuff and the injuries and everything that's happened. And he's not one of these guys that went away and doesn't really care that he never made it back. It has tortured him not being able to be back and be in full flight and be healthy. And he's written about it, and it's just your heart goes out to Juan Martín. He's the gentle giant, and we overuse that term, with pretty much anyone who is big and has a decent personality, but he really is just a fantastic human. And I was able to go down to South America and play, I want to say it was a string of 3 or 4 exos where I was basically just traveling around Argentina with Juan Martín. Brooke and I went down, and it was we had these exos scheduled, but they were scheduled before I retired. And then I decided to retire and was still able to go down there. And just everything you think of him and all the lazy ways that we all use to explain his decency are just magnified. You see how beloved he is in that country. And we played, in Buenos Aires, and then, in Uruguay, and then in a farming town in Argentina, in which was nothing, it wasn't much more than like a tin roof rodeo, something or other. And it was just magic, seeing the way that he dealt with people, seeing the way that people just mobbed him, and he's still this gentle way around them. You're around him, and it makes you think, gosh, you know what? I should have and could have been better at all moments in my career when dealing with people. So I don't think Juan Martín, sadly, will ever have peace with his career and the fact that his body kind of took his successes away from him in large part. But hopefully, at the very least, he knows how respected he is, where you get the best player of all time, putting aside training blocks and everything else to come and pay homage in your home country and giving you kind of one last night of magic. No losers in this situation. It's example one of an exhibition working, right? So, and I'm pretty sure that if we had this conversation a week ago, I'm completely anti-exhibition all around. And these last 10 days, I've seen the magic at work and how they actually are beneficial. Are we beyond criticism of complaining that we play too much and then we go play more? No. But let's focus on the value add of this specific lane for a second before we get to the negative immediately.
Can we stick with Del Potro for a second? Because something that occurred to me too is what a great way to end a career, right? I mean, we've talked a lot about how there's no easy way to do this. And it does seem like whether it's Roger at Laver Cup, it does seem like the EXO is the way to go. But you can grovel for a wild card, but you're not really competitive, and you sort of have that awkward moment of you're facing some 21-year-old
which
kid.
Which he did, by the way, a couple years ago. He did that.
Who's that?
Del Potro.
But I'm saying, what a great this occasion where look, he can go out. He's packed a stadium. He's not playing on some grandstand at 2:00 waiting for the second on to finish. You have this event. You can even win your last match, but more important than that, you pack a stadium and get a real send-off, and you don't have to grovel for a wild card and turn it into a last-minute ticket grab. I thought this was a really elegant way to wrap up a career.
Yeah, no other sport can really do that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, unless it's, but you don't think exhibition boxing has been good recently?
Yeah.
No, that was not good. It was very sad. And that wasn't ending a career, right? That wasn't like an official swan song. That was a cash grab.
I hope it was an official swan song for one side of it. But anyways, we love Juan Martín. Nothing but respect. And even there are relationships in tennis where you don't know how they start. You're getting to know someone. You have a weird match where tensions run high, and then all of a sudden you fast forward 5 or 10 years and respect wins out and you're friends for the rest of your life, right? From the moment Juan Martín lands on tour, he's established those relationships quickly. No weirdness. He doesn't need time, to get better as a person, to learn how to live on tour as a, respectful citizen. Got it right away. Was in on the joke right away. Everyone loved him right away and didn't stop.
I mean, just sidebar, as long as we're talking about the player against whom you played your last match, one thing I remember about that day was how thoroughly classy and pitch perfect he was. I assume he knew, I'm trying to remember. I mean, I assume he knew this was your last match, but it's at the US Open and there was very little emoting. He played well. He significantly, he was younger than you. He was probably in better form at the time. He won the match. He gave you a hug and then he got out of there and let you have your moment. And I thought, even if he, in his mind, his coach told him, hey, look, it's Andy's last match, I thought he handled that with such an abundance of class. That's one of my real takeaways from your last match, was how well he handled the difficult position he was put in.
Yeah, I mean, he knew. I retired after my first round, and then this was, and it wasn't a nothing thing too. It wasn't as if, listen, I wasn't what I was, but I wasn't nothing. I'd won 2 out of my last 4 events, and this was the second week of a major. So it wasn't as if, he was being classy in an exhibition, and I won the first set and ended up not winning another set. But yeah, totally. I mean, embrace at the net. And then, like you said, put his arms out towards me, and it was as classy, but it's, okay, being classy is one thing, but being classy as in a surprising exactly 0 people is another thing entirely. When you've set precedent where, that's just the way he is, that's another level. It's not a moment of class. It's a lifetime of class for Juan Martín. So we love him. We respect him. We hope that he gets through the rest of it. I mean, reading his posts about how painful his body is and driving around it hurts, and going upstairs and he hasn't gone up a stair without it hurting. We talk about the physicality of the sport, but the other side of it is hard. Our bodies aren't supposed to do what we do, on hard surfaces from the time we're 7 or 8 years old. It takes a toll. And unfortunately, it's taken more of a toll on him than anyone I can remember in recent memory. Obviously nobody deserves that, but especially not someone as decent as he is. So then we fast forward and we have the week of Carlos here in the States, and he plays MSG, just blows it out. I mean, Navarro, Pegula, Shelton, fantastic. I mean, I could watch, ice melt in the garden, and I think it would be entertaining. And he comes to Charlotte, where I live now, where my wife is from. Not a tennis town, doesn't have the history of tennis that Madison Square Garden has. Never had a pro event. Maybe like World Team Tennis back in the day, who knows? Maybe like a random Davis Cup tie, against Belgravia, who knows when, but certainly no tennis history to speak of. And Charlotte Sports Foundation takes a flyer on a tennis event. And to see the way that the community has rallied around it, and this is a community that was starving for the Masters 1000 that inevitably stayed in Cincinnati. I think they know that, at some point mistakes were made and it got away, and, good for Cincinnati for stepping up. And also I think Charlotte realizes it really messed up. or the state of North Carolina really messed up on a major scale. It was an unbelievable event, complete sellout, 16,000 plus people. And main promoter from Chart Sports Foundation has worked in the NFL for a long time, has done 1 million bowl games and a lot of other things event-wise in Charlotte. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, we're doing, we hosted the press conference at our little place, In-Town Golf Club in Charlotte. And we get there that morning and Mr. Danny comes up to me and says, are all tennis players this decent? And I said, like, kind of most of them. Yeah. I mean, we were pricks back in the day and we had bad days, but I think there's a level of professionalism. And I think people have rewritten the book. Like, Carlos was like pitch perfect with every person. And it's big for Charlotte, but this is not a prioritized event for him, right? This is something that he's doing, obviously, because he's getting paid. Like, there's no doubt about it, but he doesn't act like someone who's there to get paid. He acts like someone who is trying to add value. And if he is getting paid, he's the safest offer in tennis now. One, because of, like, in an exhibition where he's throwing the full box of tools out there, I'm watching first row and I'm like, the shots he's hitting, I know what he's doing. I can see the racket speed. I was sitting next to Techie Sean. I'm like, holy shit, like the speed he can create at the last minute, being this far from him. I've seen him at the Open, obviously, but you're up in the suites. And I mean, it's just next level talent. And then he does it all with a sneaky smile on his face, in on all the jokes, knows when to bring people in. I was like, it's the most thirstless stardom I think I've ever seen. Right? Like, he's doing the jokes because he's actually genuinely happy and having fun as opposed to trying to get a laugh. Right. And Francis was like, they need to take that that show on the road. Like, if Carlos is doing Exos anywhere, that needs to be his guy. Cause those two together joking, they can each take a joke. Francis was just ripping on him the entire night. Like, whatever there is to rip on, Carlos took it. Like, there's no sort of ego about it. Francis was great start to finish. They all showed up to, like, it was a pretty heavy itinerary for an EXO. I'll tell you that. Pressed, great.
Oh, tell people what you mean by that.
I mean, they arrive. So Carlos plays Wednesday night in the Garden, arrives Thursday, does this long talk on Thursday night with Andrew Krasny for a limited group of people. They're up at the press conference at 9 a.m., do full press for everyone available. And then they break off to do one-on-ones. I had a great time so after those one-on-ones, we went and I watched Carlos hit golf balls for about an hour where he just kind of was like a normal human. You sent me
that picture or the video that we later posted on Served. And I was just like, dude, that's like not fair. I've been trying so hard.
As an aside,
so hard.
His golf
looks that good.
His golf swing is so good.
It's so good.
It's so good. And I literally, so he's referencing, you can check out our Served Twitter page, Instagram. It's all, we posted it. I videoed one swing. It's not like I was there thirsting for a video for 10. Without him knowing, he was behind, like, we were on a hitting bay, a TrackMan at In-Town, and he's behind a tree, has to hit about a 30-yard draw, after which, 3 seconds earlier, he was telling me he can't hit a draw on purpose. It's a 30-yard draw, I think like 175 yards, just a teardrop onto the green. Perfect swing.
I mean, it would look so good.
Annoyingly good.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I think I would take tennis players over any other athletes in like a cross sport
you're right.
match.
Yeah, there's
it's strength and it's strength and conditioning, but it's also hand-eye, right?
Yeah, there you take people from other sports, and I've hit with best athletes from other sports, and you put a tennis racket in their hand, and it's really hard. They can look like not athletes very quickly. Tennis, to your point, I think, like, whether it's shooting a basketball, I've watched Marty Fish go to Shea Stadium and hit 6 homers in batting practice. Alcaraz with this golf swing, like, it seems to translate. Even like Rafa's swing video, like his golf swing video, people are like, oh my God, what a terrible golf swing. I'm like, he's a scratch, by the way.
Yeah, scratch.
Yeah, that ugly swing shoots 71 every time.
That's annoying.
Marty's the gold standard there. I didn't know Marty hit a home run at Citi Field.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
that's,
Well, in
that's
batting
not
practice,
nothing.
this was like early. I think he got the call because someone else canceled, went over and took batting practice before the US Open, hit 5 balls out.
That's insane.
And he does the obnoxious thing that like a lot of tennis players do where he plays tennis righty and then goes in and hits 5 or 6 out at Citi Field lefty.
Oh my God.
Plays golf lefty +6. Anyways, so Carlos and I've seen him in passing. We've met. First time we actually hung out for an hour. I think he's fully aware of what he is now. I mean, he's one of the biggest global sports stars we have. You know, he's the kind of guy, he's the celebrity in the room amongst sports celebrities, I think in most rooms that he's in now. You know, I think people are thirsty to see him, thirsty to watch him. You know, but it was great. We talked, he asked, you know, a million questions. I mean, I think, you know, he knows what he is. And I think he's still at the point where he doesn't want to like disappoint anyone, you know, and that's a tough situation. It really is. You know, he's going to have to learn how to schedule and say no. And, you know, maybe, you know, slightly disappoint someone sometimes to keep his sanity over time. But really enjoyed him. Everything I thought about him, which was largely positive going in, is even more positive. The power of an EXO, the city can't stop talking about what they saw.
No, I mean, there's articles, tons of articles about it coming on. Just everyone is so excited. I mean,
and to a person, like
I think the last big event that they had here of this level was something that was with Arthur Ashe and Chrissy Everett, like in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah,
like but it is a tennis town. Like Charlotte is a tennis town. It has a rich history of tennis, you know, and there's a lot of there's city leaders that love tennis. There's great coaches that are from here. And I think exhibitions themselves and exos like this, it's almost another argument for having a longer, truer off season, because we would talk about growing the game. This is growing the game. Being able to take your kids to go see these people, that's growing the game. And ultimately it doesn't always have to be in the setting that's US Open or at Indian Wells or at Miami Open. Like, you should take the show on the road and let people see the best of the best in some capacity.
Well, it's also completely different because at Indian Wells, we're working.
Yes.
We're working. Not in the customer facing side of exos, if done well, and they can get weird, you know, they can get weird if, you know, but those two who know what to do, when to flash their skills, you know, when to do, I'm sitting next to Techie Sean. I'm like, you know, one comes in, I'm like, oh, here's 12 volleys in a row in rapid fire. We're like, we know what's happening here, but the people that can execute it kind of show the skills, how nonchalant they can be when they're not trying to keep it out of someone's strike zone or, you know, X, Y, and Z is amazing. And I have friends, you know, guys that are part of my Dingles group who went and who have taken their kids to regular events. Like, my kids loved this EXO more than any tennis match they've ever been to. My son, my kids were losing their minds. I don't know if they'll make it to the whole thing. Couldn't have been more pumped up.
Loved it.
Oh my gosh.
So let me ask you this, because I think you're right. I mean, I think, look, it's great for the fans. New York used to have events and they used to have the year-end championships. Now they don't. So if you love the US Open and now for one night you get to see Carlos in December, great. Sign me up. It's great for the players. I mean, I was told that Carlos will make more money this week than he will from any other. You know, he made more money this week between these exos than he did for winning Wimbledon. The one drawback you hear, and it's, you know, I mean, this is kind of the abstract tennis Twitter, but, you know, these guys bitch about the off season, and then the off season rolls around, and what do? They traipse around the world playing these exos. My question to you, Andy, having done this, I'm trying to figure, what's the exchange rate? Like what is the relative rate of, you know, if the Wimbledon final is 100 in terms of exertion, mental bandwidth? I mean, my suspicion is it's not even worth the conversation, right? No. But explain to the folks at home that it's not as though he's getting wear and tear, and playing Francis for one night in Charlotte is a little different than playing in a tournament. Yeah,
so we'll put it, I flipped a coin at the beginning of the night, and it was with Sloan and Maddie, and I kind of jokingly asked with a, you know, shit-eating grin on my face, I said, "You too nervous?" And they both started dying laughing. Like, it's you're there for entertainment purposes. the mental stressors. There's not. This is the start of. This was the Maddie. Congratulations. Also, a long talk with her. Just got married. Was phenomenal. Got to spend some time and talk about that. And she's endlessly funny, honestly. But it's the grind of playing an EXO and MSG where you don't have to prepare for a potential 6-hour, battle in heat. You're playing a third set breaker, indoors, temp controlled. You fly the next day, probably don't hit on the off day. It's not like as if you're going out and going for 2 hours. You're not stressed. Results don't matter. The only thing that matters is that people leave with a smile on their face, thirsty for more tennis. There is no mental wear and tear for EXOs. It's purely flying. Flying and time change, adding one more of those is the issue. And if I get the criticism of don't complain, then go play EXOs. I'm not going to tell you that's wrong because I think it too. I think it costs, an example that pops into my mind, and I don't want to fire strays at this guy because I love him. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's a responsible citizen. But like Casper went and did that week in South America with Rafa and got off to a slow start. Carlos, let's call it like it is. He finishes December 6th, right? And by the way, he had done a vacation, first vacation he's had forever in the Caribbean with some buddies for a week before he played these EXOs. So it's not as if he had almost basically done his relaxation, got in some reps, obviously got paid a lot of money, which what other time would we tell someone not to do their job for an insane paycheck? Mike, don't do those 2 documentaries next week because it offends me.
Yeah.
Listen, we're adults. We're adults. Now,
what is a business, right?
It is a business.
business.
And also like what I don't accept is, hey, I didn't have a long enough off season. I just don't want to hear about it in Australia if he's not feeling great.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't want to hear about it. If I did, it wasn't long enough, but he's not playing any warm-up events for Australia. So he has, 6 weeks. By the time he finishes in Charlotte, that's plenty of time. You can still kind of work your way back into shape. You'll probably start doing off-court training next week when he gets back. 3 weeks of tennis training, his body will be, that's plenty of time to get ready for Australia. And let me repeat again, he was off for who knows how long in Caribbean vacation where he's playing golf every day, didn't play tennis before these EXOs. So had already kind of reset. It's not as if he has to reset now.
But to that point, like if they had,
and sorry, just to put it's a nothing burger compared to playing in an event, John. Just if that was a long-winded version, it is a 10% versus 100%, maybe. Physically, it's like, okay, you go through the motions, you hit some serves, you fire off, but you're not playing the nervous, long, extended points. There are no conditions to be spoken of. There's not the threat of a quick turnaround time where they finished at 11 and they're going to have to play at 1. There's not the threat of, 4 back-to-backs like a Masters series, or at least they used to be. You don't have to prepare your body to be ready to play 6 hours. Which
you don't think,
at a slam
you don't think these guys are hydrating and looking at scouting reports before they play? No, but I think that's a point that gets lost in this, right? It's at some level it's apples and oranges, and this is not like they're adding events to their schedule. Let me ask you 2 real questions. 2 quick questions. One of them, I don't. This is just random Carlos intel I heard, but one thing I heard was that the Olympics were really a big deal for him for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that's when he really grasped his popularity, and all of these other athletes were recognizing him and coming up to him, and some of them were, the Slovenian fencing team, but some of these were other big-time athletes that wanted their picture taken with Carlos, and that really sort of crystallized to him that, hey, I'm this. You said it. He's the sports star in the sports realm. What else? I don't want to ask you about private conversations, but what else did you observe? You saw him play with eating vinegar-based barbecue to hitting golf balls. I don't know. What else did you give us some more insight? What else did you observe?
Nothing. We had, some talks, and he's very curious. Listen, I was never even close to what Carlos was, but, and I don't think it's a coincidence that he seeks out someone like Ferrero from a young age who has seen it not at the level of global superstardom that Carlos is now. None of us, there's 5 people that 3 people at a given time who experience that. but very curious. You know, he was asking questions as if I had a relevant opinion, and we like genuinely curious about, you know, different things, not tennis specific, nothing to do with strategy and tennis and what, but just I think he's very real, you know, very quickly realizing what he is, you know, and what people need from him, frankly. And there's a lot of responsibility, especially we're a sport that doesn't have a home team, you know, and we love Jannik Sinner, but he's quiet, you know, and it's one of the great things about him because he's able to handle this shitstorm of attention in a very calm, measured way. Carlos is like, you can't take your eyes off of him when he's playing, right? Because he does all this crazy shit and he's able to pull off anything. So therefore he often tries to pull off everything, you know, and off the court, he's got this smile. And, you know, I think there's just a magnetism to him that I think everyone, and the other players really like him, right? It's not often that you see this level of stardom. And I guess maybe it starts with Roger and Rafa where there's no pushback or jealousy from the players because there's an underlying decency there, right? And listen, he's probably exhausted. He knows that he wants to get home. He knows what this week was. But I watched 75 different interactions that he had over the course of a day and a half, and not one of them, he wasn't not present for one of them. You know, so I think obviously he's going to have to navigate it. We're seeing a slight tweak in the schedule where I think I read that he's, you know, doing Rotterdam or Europe instead of flying for 3 tournaments in South America. I'm sure the tournament director there that have had him for a couple of years are disappointed, but there's going to be these moments of disappointment where he's going to have to become a little bit more selfish, right? I don't think he can be everything to everyone all at once. You know, I think because he has this personality, there's a bigger expectation around him than, say, Sinner on the public facing side. And, you know, Sinner in Italy now, it's the same thing. It's absurd. I talked about it a couple of weeks ago. He's like Beckham. Like he doesn't go into anywhere without getting a standing ovation. It's just nuts. I was like, after the big 3 with Novak and Roger and Rafa, I didn't know that we'd see this level of adoration again. And, you know, here we are. It's just crazy. But I think the example that those 3 have set has trickled down. It really has. You know, how can Carlos be an asshole, you know, when there's the best players of all time haven't operated that way largely? You know, how can Sinner be one if the players haven't operated that way largely? You know, it's not as if we're dealing with like, listen, I mean, we can talk frankly, you know, Andre is amazing. He had bad days. Pete was amazing and didn't want to talk to anyone he didn't have to talk to. You know, I see the best side of Jimmy Connors, the human side of it, but shit, oftentimes in and around the courts, it wasn't there because all he had to do was be obsessive about this game. That's the way a lot of us operated. Mac's an asshole half the time. Like he gets it. He would tell you that. I was terrible at moments, right? And I'm not putting myself in but just there was a precedent where it was like, okay, because the stereotype for an athlete, Michael Jordan broke a teammate's nose in practice by punching him out of competitiveness.
You know who that teammate was?
It was Steve Kerr, wasn't it?
Steve Kerr. Yeah. Exactly.
So
good trivia. Oh, you're right. I mean,
has anyone ever heard from Steve Kerr again? What's he been up to?
Yeah, what's he been doing?
Exactly. I think after that nose break, he never showed up in public.
I have a question for both you guys.
Steve Kerr, huge tennis fan, by the way.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So do you think though, then this next generation of athlete, right? They watch the Federer and they watch Nadal and they kind of look at the way they carried themselves gracefully. Do you think that's influencing
totally
greatly, both on the men's and women's side,
totally.
Right? But also then this is the first real group that is dealing with the value of social media and being able to create your own environment of reach.
Well,
right?
I think we know him a little better too because of all that, right?
Yeah.
Like as much as information being available and it being sideways a lot of the time, like let's give an example. We know Sabalenka's coming on the show. We know it's going to be a great time. Like we instantly know it's going to be funny. It's going to be hilarious. We're going to get, you know, Techie Sean's going to get 3 quotes to clip and be like, these are gold. Like we just know, I think we just know all of our athletes a little bit better because of what you're talking about, right?
Well, they just had 5 stars at the F1 championship, right? Sinner and Sabalenka. And I mean, and they're all getting paid to go there for a week to Abu Dhabi. And like, I don't see them inviting NFL players over.
No,
you know, I don't see them inviting Major League Baseball players over.
And what it does is it kind of flexes the muscle of how big tennis is globally. And it's really having a moment. You know, think about a kid coming over here, selling out a city he's never been to easily, and having those people know him, feel like they know him, have a relationship with him, and just sell and just fully eating out of the palm of his hand for 3 hours and delivering that memory.
I will say that the club tennis players that I was talking to too leading into it, our friends that were excited about it, they were excited to see all four of them. And I think
Francis was the perfect person to play in these events, by the way. Yeah. Maddie and Sloane, fantastic. Yes. I mean, it's just tennis is full of great citizens. And, unfortunately, we give a lot of ink to the carnival barkers of our game, right? The ones who have opinions that mostly just benefit themselves when they say them, right? And it's like we're gonna be pissed about our own failures by dragging on other people. Who? No, I mean no one specific, obviously, specifically, but it's
who you're talking about.
Go ahead.
Can I go back? Can I go back to something? I think you had a really interesting point about part of this is like the leader sets the culture, and when Roger and Rafa behave like thoroughly decent human beings, the guy who's number 39 is probably going to think twice about leaving his trash in the locker room. But do you also think, this is more a question than a statement, but I wonder if other players don't look at the very top players and said, you know what, if Sabalenka can go to an F1 race and she can dance and she lets the public in and she's cracking jokes, maybe that changes my approach to the sport. I mean, I always thought people watching Roger take photos right as he was getting on court trickle down to maybe I don't need to be completely singularly focused when the number one guy in the world can be a decent guy and can spend time with his family or whatever.
Well, I think I don't think there's a one size fits all, because you look at Iga and Sinner, and I mean, I know Sinner was up, but they're like pretty head down. So I think you have to know your personality. Not everyone can play tennis like John McEnroe. Like, look at his strokes and imagine if you tried to teach everyone to play the same way. Not every person's going to finish a forehand whippy over their head. Not everyone, like Rafa, not everyone can, navigate, with the relaxed nature of Roger. I was like, I was losing my mind, the Saturday before a slam on Monday. I don't think one size fits all, but and this is something we actually talked about in the Sabalenka thing, where she's rewriting. You can have a personality. You can do crazy shit, like have your fitness guy put a tattoo on his head for a US Open final and it's not considered unprofessional. You can basically default to what feels good to you, and the non-negotiables are rest, work, and that's kind of it, and discipline. If you can account for those three and then also go to a race, then great. Then go to all the races that you want. And like one last thing on Carlos, like we're talking about like personalities in tennis and charisma. He does it effortlessly, right? It just seeps out of him. It's not like a Mr. T starter set and, what?
Just Mr.
What?
T.
He's
T starter set.
references.
It's not a Mr. T starter set and a haircut. That's not personality. That's not charisma. Dancing for likes isn't charisma.
Yeah.
What Carlos does, what he did here, lifting people up, literally doing the game of tennis a solid. We can argue about exos all the time. I have a lot of thoughts about them. A lot of times they're net negative, I think. Also this week, completely saw the value in them. In a huge way, growing the game. All of these kind of empty platitudes that we talk about all the time, have those, right? Definitely. But also you can think different things about the same thing, right? Like exos, yeah, people have used them in the wrong way and it has burned them during the regular year. And also saw a bunch of them in the last 10 days, and tennis is better for having had those nights. 100% true.
Yeah.
So I know nuance is difficult at scale. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So hopefully we put more stock in that than. I'd
be curious to see what the ratings were on Tennis Channel for those.
I don't know anything about that.
They were covered really well.
Who knows? All I know is that if they did it again next year, they could sell 30,000 tickets.
Yeah.
We don't have the venue for it. But props to the good stories in tennis, the good people in tennis, people trying to build the sport up, not tear it down. I can't get this one Kendrick Lamar lyric out of my head.
What's that?
Just this whole week, it's just been in my head.
What is it?
It's this song. He does this one song, and he says, "Don't tell no lies about me, and I won't tell no truths about you." Thanks for listening to The Served.